Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and I think even good evening to some of our attendees today from the Microsoft partner ecosystem. I'm super excited to have you all here today and super excited to kick off what is our annual Microsoft partner webinar. So know we have a wealth of partners across the dynamic space, and really the purpose of today is to make sure we're giving updates to our partners that are meaningful, impactful, and we're aligned from an organizational perspective to ensure we're meeting the ever-growing and ever-changing needs of our customers. We'll, again, touch on a few items as it relates to our product enhancements and methodology and some key acquisitions. By way of introduction, my name is Bill Gossett. I've met a lot of Microsoft partners in my time here at SPS, been at SPS for about 5 years. I lead our Microsoft partnership team. Prior to my time here at SPS, I actually spent time as a partner, similar to all of you, working for a large ERP VAR where one, I was selling and implementing ERP, but two, working very closely with SPS and other ISVs in the ecosystem to ensure we're aligned. So I understand your world, and I have a lot of empathy for you. Along with me, I have two individuals that I get the pleasure of working with on a day-to-day basis. The first is Jim High. Jim leads our Microsoft delivery practice across all product lines, has been with SPS for a little over 2 years, but Jim is unique in the sense that he has a ton of Microsoft partner experience where he actually led D365 delivery teams of partners and led Microsoft partners as well. So really leads our team and our strategy to ensure our customer success teams are aligned not only with our customers, but partners like you. And then last but not least is Will Bublitz. I think Will takes the cake in terms of tenure here at SPS. Will's been at SPS for 15 years and really owns our product strategy as it relates not only to our D365 integrations and enhancements, but also how that relates to our network and overall go-to-market. So just to jump in, I mean, really what we want to touch on here today is not to give you an idea of, hey, not to kind of give you or go through the typical, hey, this is who SPS is, kind of the solutions that we have, but at least at a high level, give you an idea of the customers we work with, and more importantly, how we approach the market. I will say, and this is on me, I don't think we've done a great job educating our partners on how SPS goes to market, because in a lot of cases, we are talking to the same customer without knowing it. So that is a huge focus for SPS moving forward to make sure we're aligned with our partners. And I have some asks for all of you at the end. Secondly, we'll touch into some our D365 experience. I know a lot of you have worked with SPS, but I think it's important just to highlight kind of where we are and where we're going and how that impacts our partner model as a whole, which I'll dive into. Jim will then get into some really cool stuff as it relates to some items that we've been focusing on, or some extremely strategic items we've been working on here as an organization as it relates to our customer onboarding and what that means for not only our partners, our customers, but our internal team members to ensure we scale effectively for our customer needs. And then Will come in and talk pretty specifically around some items around product enhancements as it relates to not only our network, but also some cool stuff we're doing in F&O and BC. And then I'll close out with some items on some key areas of focus as it relates to some industry updates and requirements that I think has some pretty impactful stuff as it relates to the D365 community. And a couple updates as it relates to some recent acquisitions that we have made here at SPS that impact our existing customer base and have a pretty cool impact to our partners. And then lastly, some key takeaways. If you guys have any questions throughout, toss them in the chat. We'll address them at the end, but also make sure, hey, we send out a survey coming out of this to ensure you guys are getting the valuable content that we hope we're providing you here today. So to jump in, and I'm not going to spend a ton of time here on this slide, but I do think it's important. So SPS Commerce, we're a full service supply chain organization. We are global. Both Will and I are based out of our headquarters here in Minneapolis, where about 2,000 of our 3,000 employees are located. And really at the end of the day, we work with three distinct customer types. First being buying organizations, so think retailers, grocers, distributors. Second, think those suppliers, distributors, or manufacturers selling into those buying orgs. And then lastly, logistics providers, so think 3PLs or outsourced warehouse organizations and carriers. All of which I think is really cool, and also can be challenging, is have a presence in the D365 space, where we have customers as a retailer or buying org, customers as supplier, customers as a logistics provider. Actually, sometimes two or all three of those, which you can imagine adds a really cool wrinkle. And really where, I mean, I'm sure all of you know us as is we provide EDI, not only support as it relates to the services in our team, but the network and D365 integrations to support those customers to exchange that critical information going back and forth. But as you can see here, we do a lot of other things as it relates to not only the solutions, but that we provide, but more importantly, the business problems that we solve. I'm not going to cover all these. I'll just call out a couple that I think are relevant. The first being in retailer. So think vendor onboarding and change management. And really what that means is when we have an organization running D365 as a retailer or buying org, we not only provide them the D365 technology, get the data in and out of the system, but just as important, we're engaging their vendors. We actually did this with a large bulk wholesale retailer that I will not name, but take a guess, where we onboarded 5,000 of their vendors. So that organization didn't have to do that. So we're probably not only the D365 technology, but also the platforms to onboard their vendors so they don't have to do it. The other two that I think are really, really critical, specifically to the D365 space, is under the supplier bucket. One of which I'll cover later on, because I think this is some pretty cool stuff, is around revenue recovery. Again, I'll touch on that here a little later. And then secondly, sell-through data. I mean, and what sell-through data means is those suppliers that are selling into a retailer, especially right now with some of the interesting economic climates that we're all dealing with, is how are products performing by SKU, by product line, by location, so those suppliers can make educated decisions and double down in certain areas or reallocate their focus. And a lot of that sell-through data actually comes from retailers. Now, how do we do that? We do that through our network. I'm not going to list out the stats here, but really what this allows our customers to do is say yes. So we have the world's largest retail network. So if a supplier comes to us running D365 saying, hey, I have a new retailer that I need to connect it, and they are telling me I have to do EDI, I have no idea what that means, they can say yes. If they have a new fulfillment model with a retailer, they can say yes. If they're adding a new 3PL, they can say yes. So for us, it allows our customers to say yes to new business to ensure that our organizations are in a business to grow and scale. So that's my high level on SPS that I think is just at least a level sets us here for today. Where I want to spend some time before I turn it over to Jim to dive into some really cool stuff from a delivery perspective is our go-to-market approaches, because I think all of them intersect. And like I mentioned earlier, I don't think we do a great job from a partner perspective educating our partners on really what that means and the impact in the market. So none of these are in any particular order. I ended with partner because I think that flows better and kind of tease up some things that relates to partner benefits. But first, I'll cover retailer and buying org. So like I mentioned before, we have a whole team engaging the retail and buying organization and market around distribution, manufacturing, grocery, you name it, and going out to them, aligning on their business problems, some of which I mentioned before, and to providing them solutions, not only to get the data out of their system, right? So whether that be an ERP, a WMS, a TMS, but more importantly, onboard their vendors. And that's, as you can imagine, if we get a list of 5,000 vendors from a retailer, they're not providing what ERP they're running, who their VAR is, none of that stuff. In a lot of cases, they don't care, but we do. So we want to make sure that, hey, we have a really good understanding of that. And maybe some of your customers today who aren't using SPS have engaged us through that practice. So I think there's certainly an area of opportunity there to be better aligned. Second is our supplier go-to-market. So I think that's where in a lot of cases where most of us have engaged, today is we have a whole team of over 300 account managers engaging the market, not only through retailer logistics, but also partner, and ensuring we're aligned with those supplier needs based upon, hey, they've been doing EDI or retail business for over 20 years. They're moving ERPs, or they're on a legacy platform, but whatever the case may not be working for them. We have a whole team working with them. Thirdly is logistics providers. So like I mentioned before, we have a whole team that works directly with 3PLs and carriers that, oh, by the way, typically are the same support similar customers as in the suppliers and retailers. So not only are we providing them solutions from a logistical standpoint, but we also partner with them as well. And then lastly, but not least, and I think this is the purpose why we're here today. SPS wouldn't be where we're at without our partners. And I'm speaking to every single one of you on this call, and specifically the D365 ecosystem. Partners are critical to our success. And where I want to spend some time here today is kind of, again, highlight some of the expertise we have in the Microsoft ecosystem, and at least at a high level, just holistically, kind of our partnership model and benefits that come along with it. Because I think there's some really cool stuff that we've been doing to make sure we're aligned with our partners at the right levels, not only from a sales and delivery perspective, but from a products perspective as well, which is the reason why Jim and Will are here today. So again, just to highlight, the Microsoft ecosystem, highly strategic for SPS, both in terms of our relationship with Microsoft, the amount of years we've been doing it. We've been in this space for over 20 years. We have done this over 5,000 times across the various D365 solutions, and we have an entire team specifically dedicated to our Microsoft customer base. So these to me is some really cool stuff. I don't think any other provider out there can say this, and it's something we're not getting away from. We're doubling down both in terms of our technology, the enhancements we're making, but also the team across product, tech, delivery, support, marketing to support not only our customers, but our partners on this call to ensure we're aligned with where Microsoft is going, but also, more importantly, where our customers are going to meet their needs. So to get into our partnership model, I'm going to spend a little bit of time here on kind of how we engage with our partners. And a lot of you may already know this. I just think it's a good level set to ensure we're aligned. So SPS, we have a partnership network of over 2,000 partners, highly mature. We work with partners every single day, and I'll touch on kind of our dedicated Microsoft team here in a second, because that's some of which you've already worked with. But we work with our partners in a co-sell manner, meaning in a lot of cases, either you all are engaged with an existing client where you're deploying new ERP, whether that be F&SC, BC, or working with clients on solutions around, I don't want to call them legacy, but like solutions around like GP, AX that are looking to make the move down the way. We co-sell, meaning we want to make sure we're lock in step with all of you, because we're not asking our partners to go out, sell our solutions, deliver our solutions on our behalf. We want to make sure we're lock in step. So one, we understand where you're coming from as a partner, what your goals are. Two, how we're solving the customer's needs. And then thirdly, I think this is probably the most critical, we're showing a joint front. I think if we're not doing that, we certainly don't have, there's certainly opportunity to strengthen the partnership. Now, as it relates to benefits to our partners, I think there's two key areas. I mean, when we're working with our partners, the partners are referring business to SPS, or we're working opportunities together, we provide rev share to those partners, as there's certainly, we want to incentivize our partners to not only recommend SPS, but ensure that we're aligned. So there's certainly a financial benefit there. Thirdly, which I think is really cool, and we're seeing a huge influx this year. I actually just got off a call prior to this. We're seeing a lot of clients interested in changing systems, where we actually share leads with our partners, meaning we have a customer base of over 50,000 organizations globally, a lot of which are either on entry-level systems, running their business on spreadsheets, which sometimes I'm shocked to see how many organizations are doing it, especially at the revenue they're at. Or like I mentioned, on like legacy platforms that they know they're outgrowing, and they need to make a change. And they in a lot of cases, they come to SPS saying, "Hey, SPS, I know I need to make this change. I have pain in these different areas. Who do you recommend? Who do you work with most often?" We provide those leads out to our strategic partners that we're aligned with on a day-to-day basis. So if you're not taking advantage of that today, I highly recommend we certainly have a discussion around that, as we're seeing a huge influx of that already here in Q1 and our Q1 here in 2025. And then lastly, continuous feedback. I think I'll probably say this quite a bit here today, and I say that a lot with our partners, is how are we doing? How are we performing? Are we aligned? Do you have an understanding of where we're coming from? And do we have an understanding of where you're coming from? So those, I just want to touch on all of those, because I think it is extremely important, as we do this every single day. And it really comes down to, and this is kind of my kumbaya moment, and then I'll turn it over to Jim and Will, is we're all in this together, right? In every single engagement that we have in the D365 ecosystem, we have you as a partner, we have SPS, and most importantly, we have the customer. And I think we all have our own interests, we all have our own goals, we all have our own opinions as it relates to the solutions. But I think we can all agree at some point or one another that our goals, opinions, objectives intersect. And our goal here at SPS, especially from a partnership perspective, is to make sure that one, you as a partner know that's where we're coming from, but two, we have a good understanding of where you're coming from to, at the end of the day, ensure we're supporting the customer's needs, not only now, but in the future. And hopefully today we'll give you a sense of what that looks like, but that's not a ending task, right? That's evolving on a daily and weekly and annual basis. So I just want to touch on that because that's where your team comes into play. Some of these individuals may seem very familiar to you. These three live and breathe Microsoft every single day, 100% dedicated to Microsoft. We wouldn't be where we're at without them. And if you know who if you don't know who your partner engagement manager is, we can certainly take some follow up coming out of that. But again, our team's here to serve our partners to, one, make sure we're aligned on where SPS is going, but we have a good understanding of where you're going as a partner to, at the end of the day, support our customers where they're going. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Jim. As like I mentioned before, he has some pretty cool stuff as it relates to what we're doing internally here to enhance the onboarding for our customers and for our partners.
Yeah, thanks, Bill. So I'll talk about our implementation approach. And I realize that there's probably a mixed group on this call. So you might be in delivery, you might be in sales. So some of this is specific to our delivery process, but I think it's good for everyone to have context about how we do things. And just given the nature of our products and the way we do our projects, we do work directly with customers, right? So all ISVs, that's not the case. We do. So that partnership that Bill's talking about with you all as partners, along with the client, that three-legged stool is where it's really important we have alignment on how we do things. And so on the next slide, we'll talk a little bit about how this looks. And so there's kind of two focuses on this. And I think something that differentiates us from some of the other EDI providers that are out there is that it's kind of, I view it as quickest to start versus the quickest to total value, right? So there's on the left-hand side of the screen here, you talk about the focus on just getting quick implementation. So a lot of times we'll hear that others in the space might say we can get up and going in a matter of days, something like that. A lot of times that's just getting the implementation or the product installed. And then it really turns over to you as a partner and as a client to actually run through and do a good bit of the heavy lifting. So in contrast to that, our focus is really on what you see on the right side, which is really around long-term value, the optimization and using the efficiency. So we do start with a roadmap or a recommendation, as we call it. So that's similar to what many of you are probably doing on your projects. You're working with something similar when you implement ERP systems. We go through that process to make sure we understand all of the details of what is needed in there from the beginning. That helps us create our test plans, helps us make sure we have good validation as we go forward with the testing process. And at the end of the day, it actually leads to less customizations, less one-off things, because we're kind of approaching it holistically, as opposed to kind of starting with one training partner and then moving on from there. So it creates stability. It helps us get the right solution out of the gate. We find that actually gets us to the finish line faster. So we find this approach works faster than others. And we do want to be methodical with it and really deliver in how we approach that. So part of the next question that people ask a lot is about readiness, right? So what do you need from us is something that comes up quite a bit. So it's kind of in two buckets here, right? You think about the system and the process. So on the system side, we need basically, obviously, the environment to be provisioned. So a lot of times it's BC, it's F&O. We need to make sure that's up and going so that we can actually perform the testing that we want. With that, there's some key components that we want. For example, the WMS being selected and configured is important. So for example, you might say, if I'm a BC customer, I know I'm going to use InsightWorks. That's helpful. That's good context for us. We really need that in place and configured so that when we want to run documents through the system, it's there and it can be done. So those are key components that are important to us. Another area that comes about, often we get questions on this, is master data, obviously key to the testing process. So when we get to that point, we need to make sure that is in place and ready to go. So you think about things specifically like item, location, cross-references, charges and allowances. That needs to be there for our testing to work. We don't want to get into a situation where we start testing, we hit an issue, it really has nothing to do with the solution, it has to do with just the data elements that are there. So that being said, we understand, this question comes up often a lot as well, is that you might have multiple data migrations that happen during the process as you're cleansing that, particularly if you're moving from an old, for example, NAV or AX system, you're moving to one of the newer products that exist out there. You might go through rounds of this. So we're not asking for it to be 100% complete, but we do want it to be in a state that's significant or it's substantial enough that we can actually perform our testing. So in essence, we just need that environment ready for us to perform that next level of testing. The other piece that comes about is more on the process side, right? So when you think about order to cash process, we want that to be defined. So again, similar to our process, you're likely going through something, whether you call it discovery or road mapping or whatever the term you use is to do that. You've likely gone through this process with your client to understand, like, what is that going to look like? We want that to be in place, because we obviously that will influence how we make setup decisions on our side. So that's another area from a process perspective that we want to make sure that we're staying close on and that that's ready to go for us. The second point on here is business agreements. So vendor agreements with the trading partners, that's key. Obviously, we want to get in there. Many will not test with us until those are in place. So that's got to be there. And then the third piece on this slide is just the prioritization, right? So as I mentioned before, there's three parties in this mix. So it's both ourselves as well as you as the partner and then the client, just making sure we prioritize this time. We can help with that. And on the slide that I've got in a second, I'll talk a little bit about when we need that, because that's important as well. We try to give you prep time to know when we're going to need your attention and expertise, so that we have people at the right time and we can be efficient with those time requests that we're asking. So that leads us into testing, right? So a couple things here is and this is one of the changes that we have made holistically. So we used to kind of do things hybrid, but this is one of those things that we've seen. It's a relatively small change, but has seen tremendous results from us. So there's two ways that you can look at testing: the traditional trading partner by trading partner, where you might say, okay, I'm going to get Home Depot up and live. So I'm going to receive a purchase order from them. I'm going to send it to the ERP. We'll have some help from the client to generate back an ASN, an invoice, and then we'll do some validation on that, and we'll go partner by partner. The challenge with that is that it creates a longer cycle. You're doing a one-off thing every single time. So what we do today is we do it on a document level process. So we bring in all of our invoices at one time. We have tools to help with this. We'll talk a little bit about some of the advancements we're making. We're trying to automate as much of this as possible. So we can use, if there's already a trading relationship, sometimes we can use an existing purchase order. We can run that through our system to generate test documents. That helps us be very efficient with our time. That can pull in. And so what we'll do is we'll do these in batch, right? So we'll bring in all of those purchase orders in. We'll get those over to the ERP system. Then again, we'll ask the client for help with generating the return documents, ASNs, invoices, so forth from there. That's really helpful for us to be able to, one, helps the testing process for us. We're all focused on the same thing. We've also seen clients really like this aspect of it because they can focus their teams in a consolidated manner. We're not firing off a document, hey, test this one, then it comes back to us, and we do that over and over again. It happens at one time. They can better block off their time to be able to cut out this out for the project. It's easier for planning, it's easier for scheduling, and that's been super helpful in terms of the total value and total time it takes to us to get something launched for our partner. And then I guess the kind of the last piece of this is the overall planning piece, right? So we all know that in many cases, it's not always the case, and a lot of times this could coincide with an ERP rollout. So we want to coordinate with you all to make sure that our plan fits in with what you're seeing on your side. So this is kind of a high level view of what that schedule looks like. We collect a lot of information through our sales process. We get a tremendous amount of detail on that. We have a really good handle on what that is. We go one level deeper when we get into the implementation discovery, and that's what I talked about at the beginning. So we go into all those scenarios. We work with the client directly and the partner, if you want to be involved in that as well, to be able to understand what those scenarios look like, what you're building on your side, so that we can build that out. And from there, it's delivered in a formal document. So again, similar to probably what some of the things that you're doing on your side, it is a formal documentation of what we've designed and delivered that goes through a sign-off process that kicks us off, right? So that goes into the next phase of the project. You'll see visually here, the configure phase is relatively minor when it's compared to the rest of the pieces here. So if we've done the things that I mentioned before in terms of those predecessors and those prerequisites, that configuration piece tends to be pretty small because the setup is already documented. We know what you need to do. It's just a matter of flipping some switches and we have that ready to go. And then that changes us into our validation and go live piece, right? So this is where, as I mentioned before, we would need the most time from our client. Mostly it's the client. Sometimes there's some input from the customer as well. And this is where we try to do that batch testing so we can make sure that we have the teams aligned. So there's a lot of nuance to these things, a lot of different scenarios. So our systems and our process and some of the things that we're building in combination with Will here are automating some of that so we can generate, here's the cases that we need to test on. That's the type of stuff that we'll do from an automation standpoint, but there is some effort and obviously hitting documents through the system, right? So we give you documents to the client, They return those back to us, and then we do this validation stage. So that tends to be the bulk of the project for us, is the testing to make sure everything is ready to go before we go live. And so we minimize the issues that we have in that process. And then the last piece is obviously the go live and hypercare. We know that you're all running your own cycles. You're doing, maybe it's conference room pilot, user acceptance testing, those types of things. We will embed our schedule into your project plans to make sure that we have alignment on that, so that we hit those dates as you do. And of course, when we get to the point of the actual cutover process, we have a very specific checklist that exists out there, and we've kind of built and evolved over time. Because obviously with this type of stuff, especially if we're talking about communication, that's changing from how we're receiving these documents from a trading partner. We want that to be crisp. We don't want to miss anything there. So the timing has to be very precise. So we start that process generally, it's about a month prior to go live. We're aligning with you, we're aligning with the client to make sure we have that all locked up and that we don't have any challenges that have to go live. So that's a little bit about our process and how we do it. Again, a lot of this is not probably completely foreign to you. A lot of it's probably similar to what you're doing today, but want to just cover that with you. We will work as closely with you as needed to kind of work through these projects that we do in collaboration here. And with that, I'm going to hand over to Will to talk a little bit more about what I was sharing here in terms of how we're doing this from a product perspective.
Yeah, thank you, Jim. Well, I'm very excited to have this opportunity to share a bit about our product direction and talk about where we're focusing our investments for our Microsoft solutions. So if we move ahead here, we can take a look at the three major product themes that we have here for recent updates that we've made to the product, as well as our ongoing investments. They all kind of fall into these three major categories. So the first one, enhanced onboarding, is really the work to support that approach that Jim just walked us through, right? We feel that this is key to running a successful project and implementing a solution that meets our customers' needs both today and also delivers something that's able to grow with their business in the future. So we've invested heavily here in developing tools and technology that enable this onboarding methodology. Under performance, we really want to continue to provide customers the reliability and performance that they need from our products, and that requires ongoing continual investment. Microsoft and our customers are all making changes to modernize and update their applications, and we want to make sure that we're doing the same to keep pace with the industry. And then the final category here, visibility and reporting. We want to provide our customers a seamless experience between their system and our network to really give them the visibility that they need to understand what's going on with their transactions. So I'll dive into each one of these categories in a little bit more detail here in our following slides. So enhanced onboarding, the work that we're doing here is really focused on the development of a suite of internal tools that allow us to implement solutions for our customers, as Jim mentioned, more efficiently and more consistently, ultimately resulting in a faster delivery of our projects. So from the initial onboarding and project kickoff that Jim mentioned, through discovery, configuration, and validation steps, these tools that we've built really allow us to standardize our implementation process while allowing for easy configuration-based customization to accommodate each customer's needs. This means that our builders are spending less time on manual setup efforts and more time ensuring that they really understand their customer's business and working with them to validate their solution against their partner's requirements. The methodology that we have here, supported by the tools that we've developed, really just allows us to deliver solutions not only more quickly, but ultimately in a way that is easier to maintain, that is easier to support, and allows us to make changes more easily down the road. In addition to these configuration tools, we've also built out tools to help and enhance our validation process by intelligently generating test data based on historical data we may have in our network, trading partner requirements, and order management model information, which just speeds up the testing process and helps us to ensure thorough validation for the customer. And then finally, we've done work to really make it easier to generate shipping labels and reduce the cost that's associated and the time associated with this part of a customer's solution. So for BC customers specifically, we know that they need some form of WMS, with the one we most commonly see being InsightWorks. And they have to generate shipping labels by developing label templates, right? Which can easily cost $2,000 to $3,000 per label format. And it's not uncommon that a customer needs 10 or 15 different formats. So that cost can really add up pretty quickly. As part of the world's largest retail network, SPS has a pre-built repository of labels, which are accessible today via our label API by our partners. And InsightWorks is currently in the process of testing their application with our label API using a few select customers, who have already been able to print labels using that solution and remove the need for any custom label development. So this saves the customer not only the cost of having those labels developed, but also the time that adds on to their implementation project. So if this is something that you're interested in, please work with your SPS channel representative to learn more about the status of that integration with InsightWorks, the proper process between SPS, InsightWorks, and you as a partner, and what makes a customer really a good candidate for that at this stage as we move this feature more towards general availability. Next, under performance, this is another one of our major themes, and the focus here is to continue to invest in the modernization and optimization of our product to maintain that reliability and those processing speeds that our customers need. So we've done a few different things in this area. In terms of inbound processing standards, for F&O, we use DMF as our standard method for inbound processing, and for BC, we use OData batch as our standard, both of these to give us that efficiency and ability to process high volumes of transactions that we see with our customers. We've also streamlined our mapping in a number of different ways. First, we've made changes to how we transform data through our network, ultimately reducing the number of steps that it takes to process data to give us faster speeds. And we've also simplified the maps themselves to make them more performant by moving some of the logic out of our maps and allowing builders to implement customer-specific requirements using our configuration tools that I mentioned. So this allows them to accommodate any customer-specific requirements without needing a mapping change, which speeds up the project overall. We also have tools that we can use to turn around data that we receive on inbound transactions and send it back on outbound transactions to meet trading partner requirements. This means that there's less data that we need to get into the customer's system if they don't need it, and less data they have to return to us, ultimately making the project faster in terms of integration and also making it faster to process data. And the final category here is a simplified entity change process. So we've improved our entities to reduce the need for changes by incorporating a lot of the commonly requested customizations that we see. And the goal here is just to simplify and speed up the work that it takes to get a client on board. The final area that we focus on here is visibility and reporting. So we're focused here in providing customers enhanced visibility to the transactions that process through our network. Via our system extensions, we can embed links in the customer's ERP to provide seamless visibility to the transactions as they process through our network and allow them to easily view transaction details, transaction status, error content, and related transactions with one click from within their ERP. Viewing transactions in our network, customers have end-to-end transaction visibility, which really allows them to monitor the transactions from the moment they're received by SPS until they're ultimately imported successfully to their ERP. And then as part of our reporting and analytics, customers receive standard out-of-the-box reports that they can use, as well as the ability to build their own reports. And all of these can be linked to and accessed directly from within their system via those embedded links that we provide. And we'll continue to invest in enriching the data that's available in those reports as we go on. So that's kind of a high-level overview into some of the things that we're doing with the product and where we'll continue to invest. And next, Bill is going to walk through a couple other key focus areas.
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thank you, Jim and Will. So hopefully you guys found a high level of value out of that, just in terms of the investment we're making, not only in the technology but the processes behind it. I mean, again, I've been at SPS for 5 years. I haven't seen a larger investment internally since my time as being here. I would have to imagine Will being here for 15 hasn't seen it either. So more to come. We're evolving. I'm super excited for what that means for our customers. I'm going to close this out just from a kind of key areas of focus, just from what we are seeing in the ecosystem relates to our partners, industry trends and/or requirements, and then kind of segue into some recent acquisitions. So first, InsightWorks, for those BC partners out there, I think Will mentioned it, but we are doing some pretty cool stuff with them. We already have an integration, but we found there was a very significant business problem for our customers. This just in the EDI world, outside of SPS as well, is where labels were very manual to create, which was both costly for the customers. We'll toss out those numbers, but two, it really limited or inhibited customers to take advantage of their investment in InsightWorks and EDI, meaning hey, if I have 10 retailer requirements, I'm not paying 20 grand for those labels. I may pay for a couple from a high volume. So we are in the process of rolling out a label integration. If you are not familiar, or if you're a BC partner and work with InsightWorks, please contact us. We'll certainly send some follow-up after this. I think it's critical that we're aligned on where we're at, but just as important the process and some good customer candidates. Secondly, this has nothing to do with the political climate. When I say FDA, this is more around what we're seeing as it relates to our food and bev customers and what they're going to be required to do. So if you focus in the food and bev industry and you have suppliers selling into grocers, they have probably heard of the term FSMA 204, which essentially is the government requiring grocers specifically, but then those grocers are passing those requirements down to the suppliers or growers to make sure that they're providing data, whether that be lot, expiration date, production date, GLN numbers. In a lot of cases, they don't have the date all the way through the supply chain. So this was initially being pushed for January 1, 2026. It was pushed out 30 months, but we've already identified 15 grocers that we work with today that are not slowing down. They're like, well, I understand this is out in 2028, but we're in the middle of this. We're going to keep pushing. So if you have customers in the food and bev space and have heard of this term or have not, please contact us. We can kind of educate on what these requirements are and how we're approaching it. And then last but not least is some recent acquisitions that are very key to kind of SPS strategy moving forward and around what I mentioned before at the beginning of the call, revenue recovery, which I'm going to spend a little bit of time on here now. And those are both in two companies, Carbon6 and Supply Pike, both of which we acquired in 2024. And this is really I think this is really cool stuff because not only is it a completely different business problem that we're solving, but two, it's for the same type of customers we work with today, meaning we as an SPS and by turn, you as a partner. So what is revenue recovery? I think very similar to labels, as I've been pretty involved in the InsightWorks stuff. This was a new topic for me, and I've been doing this quite a while. So think of revenue recovery as you have suppliers selling into retailers. I'll touch on a couple here in just a minute that are selling into retailers, but for whatever reason, whether that be overages, shortages, chargebacks, complying, pricing, returns, they are getting revenue taken away from them. So for example, a supplier sells into Walmart I'm just going to make up a number, on $1 million, they send $1 million invoice. Well, Walmart pays $800,000 off that invoice. And guess what? They don't give a lot of reasons why. They didn't pay the additional $200,000. So the purpose of our acquisitions in the Supply Pike and Carbon6 is they provide, or now we provide, tools and solutions to help identify what those chargebacks, fines, or deductions are and which ones to prioritize. And I think what's really cool for us is for the market, I would say, is there's no SPS dependency. So organizations that are suppliers selling into some key retailers, again, which I'll share here in a second, do not need to use us for EDI. They just need to be selling into those retailers. So to me, that's really cool. Now, and secondly, someone who has lived and breathed ERP for the majority of my career, I think this is pretty cool. This isn't an IT project. There is no ERP dependency or IT dependency, which I think is really cool and is separate from a lot of the work that Jim and Will are working on, and also solves a problem without having to impact an ERP upgrade or migration or whatever the case may be. Thirdly, there's immediate ROI, and there's a hard ROI to it, and it's pretty quick because in a lot of cases, our customers who are onboarded are already seeing them being able to successfully mitigate those chargebacks in a matter of 1 or 2 months. And there's some things we actually can do prior to them signing up as a client to be able to provide some, hey, this is what we're seeing, and this is kind of the value that you're going to get pretty immediately. And it's pretty dialed in, which is super cool. And then subscription-based pricing. So we have a transparent subscription model for our customers depending on their needs. And really, again, who is this meant for? I would focus on if you're working with a supplier that is selling into one of the 8 or more of the 8 on the left side of your screen, they are most likely coming across, again, chargebacks, deductions, fines for a variety of reasons that you see on the right side of your screen that all impact their ability to be profitable. So for us, this is super cool. You'll see a lot more messaging from a partnership perspective. but also out into the market, because this is a critical business problem across these retailers. And oh, by the way, there's 8 now. There's certainly going to be more moving forward, depending on which ones are certainly known for hitting their supplier community with a decent amount of chargebacks and deductions. So super excited about it. More to come. If you're interested, we'll be sending, again, like I mentioned, a survey following to dive deeper into what that means for you as a partner, and kind of some areas of opportunity we could leverage with not only our existing customer base, but other customers that you may have that may not be leveraging SPS. Now, lastly, again, just some key takeaways for all of you. I'm going to go through this fairly quickly because there's kind of a lot, or I had a fair amount, but I kind of nailed it down to, if I were you as a partner, what would I be thinking about? Or at least if I was a partner prior, these are things that certainly work for us as a partner, as we align not only with SPS but other ISVs. So, as a reminder, SPS, we have teams and business units dedicated for across the org to support our customers and our partners, whether that be product management, kind of the organization that Will comes out of here at SPS, our technology team, our CS and support resources that Jim leads, our partner marketing resources. We have a dedicated partner marketing team here at SPS, working with our partners every single day to collaborate on messaging and market campaigns to engage the market together. And then lastly, our account management team. So we have a team at SPS, very partner focused, that works hand in hand with our team to make sure we're aligned with our customers' needs, but also our partners to ensure we're aligned across our customer portfolio. Now, lastly, this is a lot, so bear with me. And I apologize for the slightly messy slide, but I think this is just important. I want to put it in one spot. So one, if you're not a partner, or if you don't know if you are, let's get you into our partner network immediately. It's very, very simple. And if you're not familiar, if you're a partner or who your partner channel rep is, reach out to the individuals I mentioned before. My contact information is my email's right here. Please feel free to reach out to me at any point. We can confirm, get you into the right resource to make sure, one, we're aligned and make sure we have everything set up from a logistical standpoint. If you already know you're a partner, hey, I'm already working with SPS. I know I'm a partner. We've been doing some pretty diligent and specific items with our partner community, especially in 2024, to ensure we have alignment with a lot of the things that Jim and Will just mentioned. Whether that be, hey, we have recurring alignment meetings, whether that be monthly, quarterly, to ensure, hey, we have a solid understanding of where you are at as a partner, what your goals and strategy are, kind of the market or ICP you're going after, and then kind of how that aligns with ours. And then, hey, what does the portfolio look like? I was just talking about this earlier today. We've really worked really well with our partners, especially, hey, we as a new ERP is being implemented, both from a sales and delivery perspective, but we have partners that we have 30, 40, 50 customers with. And we want to make sure we're aligned across that customer portfolio to ensure, one, we understand where each one of us is at, or if there's a pendency that is either on us or you or on the customer, to ensure we're supporting that customer long term. So you'll see a lot of that moving forward from us to make sure we have the proper alignment as it relates to the customer portfolio. Secondly, and that was the purpose for the last slide, we want to make sure we have the right resources across our businesses, and certainly approach it from a multi-thread perspective. And what I mean by that is, our team is aligned with you from a partnership perspective, from a delivery perspective, from a product perspective, from a technology perspective. And one, not just a kind of a one-to-one, but many to many, right? So we have the right people at each of our respective organizations aligned, there's trust built, and there's a continuous feedback loop. And that kind of goes into the next thing, is that we do a lot of enablement just like this. In some cases, more specific to depending on who the partner is and the markets they're in, around enablement and education. And we want the same thing from our partners, kind of similar to what I talked about earlier around lead sharing. We want to make sure we're providing leads to our partners that fit the markets that they strive in. We have a ton of assets, a lot of here, which we're more than happy to share with our partners here today, and certainly address any questions around delivery, product, best practices, again, like I mentioned before, marketing. And last, but certainly not least, I know there's been a lot of messaging in this market around kind of migration targets. We are here, like at the end of the day, we are here for our customers based upon where they're going in their journey. And end of story, and where you're going as a partner. Whether they're on GP, I think I can tell you today we have over 500 GP customers today. that we, at the end of the day, we're looking at what is your migration strategy. And if you have GP customers that you're working with, we want to make sure we're aligned with your migration strategy as well. So we're here to support. We're not here to push or force a client to migrate. We're here to have a good understanding of where they're at, and more importantly, where they're going. And then lastly, upgrade, whether you're a BC or F&O, upgrades happen fairly frequently. Want to make sure our partners are aware of what that upgrade strategy is and that process looks like. So those are just a couple items that we're getting super deep with our partners, just to make sure we have a shared understanding of where each one of us are coming from. And I would say just as important, feedback from our partner community on, hey, where should we double down? Where can we improve? Where are things that are working well that can translate into others? So again, just some items to think about there and take away. And then for those of you that travel are at Microsoft events quite frequently, I think some of these are pretty familiar to you all, but the SPS team will be at a few future events, one of which being DynamicsCon coming up here in May in Chicago. Second is the Biz App Summit. If you're not familiar, that is a partner-only event held in Seattle in late July, where Microsoft and partners like you heavily attend. So we're super excited about to make sure we're aligned. And last but certainly not least, Community Summit. I think we all know that's the largest gathering of Microsoft users and partners of the year. So again, thank you for all that have joined. I will check to see if we have any questions in a second. Like I mentioned before, we want your feedback. So there will be a survey to come. One, in terms of, is this content valuable? Like I mentioned before, this is the first of our annual partner, and potentially more recurring, is if this is content that is valuable to our partners. But two, make sure, hey, we're hitting the mark. And thirdly, hey, what type of follow-up should we be engaging with you all? So more to come on that, and super excited. I'll check to see here if there's any questions. So funny, so one of the questions we got, this maybe I should have touched on this, because this is certainly relevant at pretty much every user group I go to, one of which I'll be at here in Minneapolis next Thursday, is how we think SPS EDI intersects with AI. If you were to ask me, and Jim and Will can probably touch on this as well, if you would have asked me this 2 years ago, 18 months ago, I'm like, I don't know. I think we're all at that stage. And I'm sure very similar to all of you. We actually, for us, it's pretty interesting. We're leveraging it internally. I think a lot of the things some of the things that Will mentioned in terms of builder capabilities to make our teams' lives more efficient, to make it more scalable for our customers. And then just in that same vein, making sure we're leveraging AI tools to make sure we're allowing compliancy with retailers, right? So if you think of Walmart, like it's a good one. Walmart has a full book of basically a Harry Potter series of EDI requirements, right? And that's changing constantly. So what we're doing is we're leveraging AI, one, to read into those on a consistent basis, to update our network and regression test with our existing customers, and make it a much more efficient process, so our teams don't need to go and review that manually and make those changes, which adds a decent amount of time. So we're looking at it from an internal perspective now, but a lot more to come. Will, you came off mute, so I'm sure you have some items to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think you kind of covered it pretty well, Bill. I mean, we've been extensively investing in AI, as I'm sure, most companies you talk to probably are at this point in time. We have a whole development team that's dedicated to it and has been for a while. And as Bill mentioned, a lot of what we've been using it for is internally to improve efficiencies, to support some of the strategic initiatives we have here and some of what we outlined today. That team is continuing to identify areas of opportunity for us, things that we might surface in our products to users. And we have a lot of ideas in those areas, but things that we're continuing to explore and try to decide where it's right to invest. And a lot of that has been, up until now, internal efficiencies and things like Jim mentioned around enhanced onboarding. I would expect that we, only continue to invest more in this area. And there's a lot of things that we're talking about and exploring. So.
Yeah, I would add one more thing to that. That's just that I think as a company, we don't have a single strategy around AI. It's built into all of our strategies that we have, and that's very deliberate, because in addition to the things that you're talking about from a product perspective, we use that heavily on the implementation side and support side to make sure we're staying ahead of issues. When you think about having thousands of projects, to be able to interrogate that data and say, hey, which ones do I need to pay attention to as a leader? We are using that across the business to help us inform those decisions as well.
Cool. All right, I see one more question. This is interesting. Is Does SPS track which customers are aligned to each bar? I think we're not 100% in that. So I think that goes back to the portfolio comment I made. We've been doing a lot of alignment with our partners, because what I'm hearing from partners is our partners don't track which ISVs, at least, you know, kind of foolproof on their side. That is a huge focus for us, especially those over the past 5 years. So I would say that's a work in progress for us. We do a pretty good job. We want to make sure that we're validating that with our partners, which is even more important, that we have a deeper dive discussion coming out of this. Okay, those are all the questions I see. Jim, Will, thanks for taking the time here today. And most importantly, thank you to our partners. Again, we wouldn't be where we're at without you. We're in this together. And we look forward to collaborating with you, not only at future events, but, you know, hopefully some of the items that we talked about to dive a bit deeper into our specific partnership. So appreciate the time, everyone, and we'll have a good rest of your week.